This is KGW News at noon.
We're all scared, we're all worried, we're all sick. And we're just hoping for the best. We're hoping that there's no casualties and that all of our babies can come out of that school okay.
That is the mom of a student at this high school in Texas that was the scene of a shooting just a few hours ago. This video shows the emergency response teams, police, firefighters, all rushing to that school right after the shooting happened. Hello, I'm Drew Carney, and that shooting at Timberview High School in Arlington, Texas, is our top story this afternoon. The school was immediately placed on lockdown as police and ATF agents tried to find the active shooter. Police say it started when a fight broke out at the school, and one of the people involved pulled out a gun and started firing. Police say 4 people were shot. One of them only suffered minor injuries, but the other 3 were taken to the hospital. We don't know yet just how serious their injuries are. Students were then taken by school bus to a spot away from the school to meet up with their parents. And police, we can tell you, have now identified the suspect in this shooting. The suspect is 18-year-old Timothy George Simpkins. There you see him. He was just brought into custody. We can also tell you this afternoon that there have been over 20 school shootings in the U.S. already this year. We'll continue to update this story during our evening newscast later today. One of our top local stories today is the fallout from the huge fire in southeast Portland yesterday that destroyed a commercial building on southeast Hawthorne. KGW's Mike Benner spoke to one of the business owners who operated out of this building, and that business owner could only stand by and watch as the fire took over.
If you've driven along southeast Hawthorne between 12th and 20th, chances are you recognize this building, anchored by Lounge Lizard. But there are a number of businesses in this building, and they all appear to be a total loss.
It was really great while it lasted.
Long after a fire ripped through an inner southeast Portland building, Evan Schlaze stood outside the yellow tape and looked at what was left of really good stuff, his business of 28 years.
I had everything in that store, and I don't have any insurance or anything, so it's a total loss.
Not much is left of the Thai and Lebanese restaurants either. Same goes for the antique furniture store, Lounge Lizard. Then there are the half dozen or so small businesses inside Schlaze's shop.
That's what's really weighing on me right now.
Livelihoods ruined by a fire that broke out around noon Tuesday. Witness videos show what firefighters were up against. Fast-moving flames that eventually brought down the roof.
I just hope no life was lost.
Nobody was killed. It's quite remarkable when you see this video. That is a smoke explosion. It injured 2 firefighters. They should be okay. This community, on the other hand.
Every single small business on Hawthorne will be affected by this. It'll telegraph through because it could happen anywhere.
Perhaps that explains the goodwill. We watched as a staffer at a nearby bakery brought treats to a family that lost their business.
We definitely are pretty tight-knit around here. We wanted to try to brighten their spirits if possible.
And that is what Evan Schlaze will miss most about owning a business on southeast Hawthorne. As he explained, this is the end of the road for him.
I was going to pull the plug in a couple of years anyway. That would have been 30 years I was doing this, so I guess I'm going to retire early.
In southeast Portland, I'm Mike Benner for KGW News.
Very sad story there in southeast Portland. And we also have an update for you this afternoon about the shooting that happened in Malala earlier this week. The man accused of firing at homes, at businesses, and at police there actually had his concealed handgun license revoked back in January over concerns that he was a danger to both himself and others. Brian Mills is his name. He appeared in court on Tuesday. He faces multiple charges, including attempted murder. Court papers show he owns a private security company and another business that sells guns and ammunition. Mills is accused of firing shots through the front of his house, hitting a truck that was leaving his driveway that day. The guy in the truck, by the way, was hit with shrapnel, but he is going to be okay. Another bullet from his gun hit the house next door, actually went through the bedroom wall of a 15-year-old girl who lives next door, and she was lying in bed at the time, but authorities tell us she wasn't hurt, thankfully. Police also say this started as a medical call, but once they got there, Mills started shooting and officers shot back. Mills will be back in court next week. Some Thorns and Timbers fans are planning a boycott right now. The Rose City Riveters and Timbers Army fan groups are both asking their members to stop buying concessions or anything else inside the stadium at upcoming Timbers and Thorns games. This is all in reaction to former Thorns coach Paul Riley being accused of sexual harassment. The groups say the Thorns organization hid the allegations when they first surfaced back in 2015. The fan clubs are demanding that the current general manager of the Thorns be removed and that several more steps are taken to improve accountability. Thorns owner Merritt Paulson says he is going to make changes, and he also added that when a player first made an accusation against Riley back in 2015, the coach was suspended within hours and then terminated within days. The latest COVID update from the Oregon Health Authority includes 44 new COVID-related deaths. And as we continue to track the latest COVID data, we see the outbreaks of infections coming in waves, typically every 3 months or so. So Pat Doris talked with the experts to try to understand the why behind that.
Throughout this pandemic, it seems we have seasons where the sky seems to be falling. COVID infections are happening everywhere, and then they're not, until it starts up all over again. Take a look. The epi curve posted by the Oregon Health Authority shows a roughly 3-month ebb and flow. One began back in late October of 2020. Then it was on its way back down by late January. Another began building in late March of 2021, then was on its way back down in late June. The current wave began in mid-July and is now on its way down 3 months later.
I've been modeling that pattern actually since quite early in the pandemic, and I call it the fear and fatigue cycle.
Peter Graven, a lead data scientist at Oregon Health and Sciences University and the person who creates the COVID forecast, says it's most likely us and not the virus creating the waves. I asked if it's our behavior over time.
The pandemic sort of quiets down, the numbers go down, people relax a little bit more, they gather more indoors, and then as the numbers start to go up, it's reported more in the news, they get more concerned, they start reacting a little bit, and so that eventually sends it back down again?
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's, the pattern I've seen. In fact, it's been really interesting. There's been times when even before any policies happen, just through news reporting and other people seeing the case counts, people's behavior would change.
You can see that same sort of wave in Clark County. The number of cases per 100,000 shows the pandemic building in November and then falling 2 months later in January. Then building again in April before falling 2 months later in June. Then building again in August before starting to fall 2 months later, now in October.
But there does seem to be, an ebb and a flow.
Dr. Stephen Krager is the Deputy Health Officer for Clark County. He believes a number of factors are at play to create these waves, but the big question he cannot answer is, where does it go from here? Because a lot of people in Clark County are still at risk.
So that's, 300,000 people in Clark County that have some sort of immunity. That means 200,000 people may not. And that, to me, that's kind of like, that explains a lot of why we've continued to see large waves. There's still a large susceptible population, people who can still get infected.
In Oregon, data scientist Peter Graven thinks it is possible that we've seen the top of the last wave. Well, that is until our immunity begins to wear off, and then, without boosters, the sky could be falling again. Pat Doris, KGW News.
Well, we're already more than a month into another school year filled with COVID rules and restrictions, so the Beaverton School District is taking steps right now to address students' mental health. This week, the district's mental health focus is on suicide prevention. District officials say more students seem to be overwhelmed this year, more seem to be anxious, and more students seem to be just struggling in general.
Our concerns, I will say that our number of suicide screenings that I've received based on kids that have reported suicidal thoughts is much higher than it has been in previous years when we've been in person.
So the Beaverton School District is holding a virtual event this Thursday for parents to talk about mental health and suicide prevention. You can find more information about this on the district's Facebook page. And we also want to remind you that the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is up and running 24 hours a day. The number is right there on the screen. It's 1-800-273-8255. All right, we have one more story before we check in with Rod in the Weather Center for the first time this afternoon. And this is a pretty good story to set up Rod because this story is about the weather. The Portland Bureau of Transportation held its annual snowplow obstacle course this week. PBOT does this every year, right around this same time, to let their crews refresh their skills with the winter weather equipment. You see the drivers there were able to navigate through the course with the snowplow attachments there on their dump trucks. This is also really a good time to remind you that studded tire season in Oregon and Washington begins in just a few weeks here on November the 1st. Here's another good setup, Rod Hill. We saw the snow coming down this morning in Timberline. Here's a time lapse from there from just a few hours ago. You saw the clouds rolling in, so we are curious here in the new set. Why are you laughing, Rod?
I don't know why I'm laughing. Oh, I'm laughing because they had an inch of snow at the lodge, and now it's all gone. For some reason, the weatherman found that humorous.
I thought you were going to tell me that I wasn't actually seeing snow.
No.
Okay.
You're correct. It was 27 up there early this morning. They had at one point about an inch of snow on the ground. That's pretty much gone since the sun's come up. It's still only 32 up there. It's a chilly batch of air that we're sitting in. And remember, we are in the scattered shower pattern. Now, so far downtown Portland, haven't really had anything. The showers have been kind of missing us, but you can see they're still lined up offshore and certainly fueling along the coast. The coast range, the Cascades had been quite wet, but even that's drying out. There are some showers coming into Washington County. Up in Longview and Kelso, you folks have had some passing showers. The one spot in our state with no rain chance today is over in Central Oregon. Here's a live camera at the back of the lodge at Sun River Resort. That's Bachelor sticking up right there, snowless. Beautiful sunny day. Temperatures over there, like here in the valley, have a chance to be around 60 degrees this afternoon. Partly cloudy over downtown right now. We're sitting at 58, so I don't expect much of a warm up. And again, still the chance of a scattered shower. If you haven't had anything yet, that chance doesn't really go away until the sun starts to go down this evening. I'll have my 7-day forecast and more with Drew coming up.